Thank you, Mitch. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Always makes me want to dance when I'm up here, flit around. Welcome to our Westlake Center for Spiritual Living Sunday morning celebration service. It's wonderful to see you all. Can you hear me? Oh, good. And our call to service this morning is lighting the flames of faith. And I'm inviting somebody you all know and love, the Reverend Michael DiFebo, as I call him, Reverend Honey Bunny. We perform this ceremony to promote the universal consciousness of life, which acknowledges that all peoples and all faiths, all sentient beings, come from the one great universal presence, which we call spirit. Fundamental to this truth is the unifying nature of all religious thought and experience, which we honor here today. We light the candle for the Tao, honoring the universal path of harmony and equilibrium, the natural way. We light the candle for the shamanic traditions, honoring the beliefs and practices of all indigenous peoples, the way of primal spirituality. We light the candle for Hinduism, honoring the path of knowledge, action, and devotion. We light the candle for Judaism, honoring the ethical path of living by sacred law. We light the candle for all forms of Buddhism, honoring the Four Noble Truths and the path of compassion. We light the candle for all forms of Christianity, honoring the Christ consciousness as the path of love. We light the candle for all forms of Islam, honoring the path of submission to the will of God as the highest calling. We light the candle for the universalistic religion of Baha'i, honoring the path of unity and peace. We light the candle for all forms of new thought, honoring the metaphysical path of mental healing through the practice of universal spiritual principles. We light the candle for all who are as yet unaware of the power and presence of spirit in their lives, and for the space that we are holding for them at this center. And as Reverend Michael lights the healing candle, please put silently into the light the names of anyone you wish to have experienced the healing flame of God's eternal love. We will have plenty of time for snuggles and hugs and handshakes downstairs immediately following at our fellowship. Not now. Because right now, I am going to go right into treatment. Affirmative spiritual mind treatment. Let's all take a conscious, connective breath. Breathe in that spirit and know, as I speak in the first person, the I am, I ask you to personalize these words for you, as the I am is the universal name Spirit calls to and through each and every one of us. And know with me the truth. There is truly only one divine mind, the one mind in which we live, move, and have our being. I am, God is, all there is. And I know as Spirit moves through me, every cell in my body is rejuvenated, invigorated, and I feel the passion of life move in, as, and through me. I open myself up more fully to receive that influx of a divine ideal, and I walk very close with Spirit, the presence always, the shining light in my eye. As I look out, I see Spirit. I see God in all faces, in all things. As I look within, I see the vast, enormous light of beauty, of perfection. And my highest self, I call forward to be that, all that God is, right here, right where I am. And I make a demand on Spirit to show me, to guide me, to direct me, to bring me to that feeling of fulfillment, satisfaction, and love, so that everything I do is tainted with the beauty and love of a new cry of life. And I revel in that idea, and I allow that to guide me. And I know exactly what I long to hear, what my soul longs to hear expressed before me is expressed right here today, in perfection. And so I release with the joy to that eternal law of creativity, knowing with my gratitude all things are possible. And I resonate to prosperity, to goodness, to joy right now. And we affirm together, and so it is. So now, my creative thought, which I dedicate to our sweet friend, Dottie Gilchrist, who made her transition a little over a week ago. And what I want to talk about is eternal joy, which is ours now. What's the secret for joy? Being joyful is truly our real nature, joy of life. That's really who we are. And love, that's what bubbles up when we're like that. When we're unencumbered by the daily events, the things that we look at with discernment, which really is judgment. When we're looking and we're being critical, that covers up that bubble, that fount of joy. But who we really are is joy, and that's our natural being. So how do we get to the point where we're expressing that pure, beautiful, natural joy and not really getting into anything negative around us? That's the secret. It's really not a secret. We know that we use treatment. If you don't have a practitioner, get one. We use affirmations, we use meditation, we use music. We read things that are good for us. And smiling. Never underestimate the impact of a smile. It releases your endorphins, and it makes everybody around you feel good. That's joy. But the mystic healers, they taught worship, not the empty words that we think of when we think worship in the traditional sense, but the real worship, the praise, the glory, the constant recognition of divine love, the perfection of life. When we recognize that, we're in worship for who we truly are. Now, I know it's probably just me, but I am really good at wit and sarcasm. I can tell you a million ways what I don't want. And it seems very natural to talk about some of the negative things that happened during my day and who did what and said what and who is where. And not to mention there are 3 ministers living in my home right now. So sometimes, we notice what we didn't want someone else to do, or what we wanted them to do, but they didn't do. But that's just in my household, right? Anyway, when we have our eye on that perfection, on the worship of who we really are, it makes all the difference. Now, in high mysticism, my gal Emma Curtis Hopkins insists, as so eloquently and righteously we critique and warn and bemoan, shall we describe the inward splendor of the one light who shines eternal to each as each commands. Notice every time you come upon anyone who make self-disparaging, complaining, or critical remarks. She says, notice. And then acknowledge the Almighty Giver. That's all we need to do. We don't need to respond. We don't need to react. We don't need to get involved with someone's negativity. All we need to do, and she is my gal, made a huge difference in my life. All we need to do is acknowledge the Almighty Giver. She says, after that, behold how your high vision uplifts others even as you shine silent. Or with any words of praise, seeing the world in a new aspect, recognize the transcendent in you that has thus transformed you and has made the world one that works for everyone. I thank you. Namaste. And now, I have the pleasure to introduce our musical guest for today. He is well known throughout the music industry for his creative genius. From his thought-provoking CD, We Do What We Do, to music we recognize on television shows and in the theater, this talented singer is songwriter, lead vocalist, and a major producer. He is divine musical energy, and he is a giver to the community. He actively creates a world that works for everyone by keeping the homeless warm with the great LA cover-up where they give out blankets. He keeps children safe with Children of the Night, and he works other projects and foundations. He's involved with bringing people food, clothing, shelter, and love. Let's have a grand round of applause for this generous, talented heart and soul, Raspin Stewart.
What's not on? Can you hear me? I was looking for halls all morning long, and they were in front of my face. So I always have to walk over here because I have to see who's over here. Even though I'm allowing you all in this section, you'll have each other. Okay, you can get two. We'll do it like a wave. Wave. What a beautiful. What's your name? Paul. Peter loves Mary. Peter loves Paul. Peter loves the rest of the I know. What? Boy, that was like a lot to live up to, wasn't it? It's like, the only part I really loved about it was the homeless, because my thing is the homeless. I really have a difficult time seeing people on the street. And I think I've come to the conclusion, I like to be in the center when I'm at the Center for Spiritual Living. I do. But my cord never quite makes it. Oh, they told me to keep my mic above I talk a lot of nonsense. So I was going to light a candle for people, because people are perfection. And we have a lot of baggage. And I love all my baggage. When you are, I am. You are a totality of the divinity. You cannot be a mistake. Nothing you do can be a mistake. I say put down the books, put down the classes, and become perfect as you are. Because God created you, and God is perfect. And we never would insult God, now would we? Would we? flying solo for so long now. Don't know if I'm lost or if I'm found in the roads we travel and the dreams we dream now. And the truth of it is what it seems now. Somewhere in time, you'll find what you're after. There's always an answer. The world keeps spinning faster these days. These days. Journey on the road to kingdom come. You follow your heart, the battle's won. Some cry for Christ, some cry for younger years. Oh, longer years, let your tears, your fears disappear. Somewhere in time, you'll find what you're after. There's always an answer, and the world keeps spinning faster these days. These days. I've been flying solo for so long now. I don't know if I'm lost or if I'm found in the roads we travel, in these dreams we dream now. And the truth of it isn't what it seems now. Somewhere in time, you're gonna find what you're after. There's always an answer. The world keeps spinning faster and faster and faster these days. These days, I'm gonna fly. Come on and fly, fly away with me. Chris Volok on guitar. Give it up for Chris. Thank you so much. Woo! I'll have a hug. I need a hug. Thank you. Bunny dip, kind of.
Thank you so much. That was very inspiring. Don't forget your cough drop. You're welcome. Coming soon. So let's all please stand for our affirmation and our congregational song. Together, joyously, I give with an attitude of abundance, knowing that as I give, I do receive. Life is abundantly blessed. I experience God's abundant blessing as I awaken to the truth of my being. Consciously awake, I behold the givingness of life and join Spirit's abundant flow of good. I am one with all there is, and so it is. Remain standing. Little two-step here.
Love is my decision.
It's up to me to give up my heart. Love is my decision.
No one else can tell me to start. And once I decide to change my mind, God will show me how. Love is my decision, right here, right now. Love is my decision, up to me to stand on that bridge. Love is my decision, no one else can make me forgive. And once I decide to change my mind, God will show me how. Love is my decision, right here, right now. Love is my decision, up to me to dance down that road. Love is my decision, no one else can lighten my load. And once I decide to change my mind, God will show me how. Love is my decision, right here, right now. Love is my decision, up to me to dance down that road. Love is my decision, no one else can lighten my load. And once I decide to change my mind, God will show me how. Love is my decision, right here, right now. My decision, right here, right now.
Thanks, Mitch. Love is certainly my decision. And now, I have the honor to introduce Reverend Keith, our esteemed speaker and our guest this morning, but he really is no stranger to our spiritual home. He's a longtime friend of Westlake and a beloved household name to anyone, especially those of us connected with the CSL Teens or the CSL Teen Camp. His consciousness builds self-esteem and wholeness. His enthusiasm for living happily ever after, authentically from source, as goodness and love, is inspiring. Yes, inspiring, to say the least. And absolutely life-changing when we embrace his uplifting message. Now, I've mentioned slowing down just a bit for this mostly older than teenage crowd. And that said, I know the truth for each one of us here today and listening via live stream. The divine message comes to me and through me perfectly for one and all. So please welcome the dynamic Reverend Keith Cox.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
I'm going to redecorate just a little bit. How are we all today? Fantastic, I know. Well, it's great to be here, and thank you for that illustrious introduction. It's a gift you seem to have in halls and cash wrapped here. So I'm happy to be here with you all on Labor Day weekend. Are you all enjoying your holiday? Yes. Wonderful. It's great to be back here at the Center for Spiritual Living in Westlake Village. Wow, look at that photo. That was taken in the Johannesburg airport, actually, after a long flight on our way to Africa. I'm really happy to be here with you guys and share some spiritual truth and have the great opportunity to engage with you in our personal evolution of consciousness and becoming more and more in tune with who and what we are as spiritual beings. I want to begin this morning with a story. And you may have heard it before, and I ask that if you have, to listen again, listen anew with an open mind and open heart, and it's this. It was on November 18th, 1995, Itzhak Perlman, the world-renowned concert violinist, came on stage to perform a concert at Avery Fisher Hall at Lincoln Center in New York City. Now, if you've ever been to a Perlman concert, you know that the act of getting on stage for Perlman is no small achievement. This is because he was stricken with polio as a child, and as a result, he has braces on both legs and walks with the aid of 2 crutches. Now, just to simply see Itzhak walk across the stage, 1 step at a time, painfully and slowly, in and of itself is an awesome sight. Now, on this particular day, he walks slowly, in what appears to be an extremely painful process. Yet he still walks quite majestically until he reaches his chair on stage. He takes his seat, slowly and carefully places his crutches on the floor, undoes the clasp on his leg braces, takes his hand and tucks 1 foot back while extending the other foot forward. Now, by now, many of the audience members, kind of groupies, if you will, are used to this ritual. They sit quietly while he's made his way across the stage to his chair. They remain kind of reverent and silent for him while he undoes the clasp on his braces. And they wait until he is ready to play. So Itzhak, in this moment, bends forward, picks up his violin, places it, the violin that's been placed in front of him, puts it under his chin, and nods to the conductor and proceeds to play. Now, as this performance began in the way that it normally does, something went wrong. Just as he finished the first few bars, one of the strings on his violin broke. The noise was indescribable. Snap! They heard it. It went off like gunfire across the room. There was no mistaking what that sound meant. There was also no mistaking what Itzhak had to do. He would have to reclasp his braces, pick up the crutches, and move back across the stage to either find another violin or find another string for this one. But he didn't. He stayed in his chair. And he sat in his chair, and he closed his eyes, and there was silence in the auditorium. For everyone wondered what was about to unfold. And all began to just look and stare at Itzhak for a moment as he sat there with his eyes closed. And after what seemed like an eternity, he opened his eyes and signaled the conductor to begin again. The orchestra began, and he began to play from the beginning. He played with such passion and with such power and with such purity that everyone was in awe of what they were witnessing. Well, the awe was, of course, because up until this very moment, it was believed that it was an impossibility to play such a symphonic work with just 3 strings. However, Itzhak Perlman refused to know or believe that he could only do this with just 3 strings. He knew that he could actually do it with 3 strings, that he didn't require 4. And so what he started doing in his mind as this all began to unfold was he was modulating, changing, and recomposing the piece in his mind as he played. And at one point, as this was all happening, It sounded as he was actually detuning the 3 strings that he had to get new sounds or music from them that they had never made before in this context. And when he was finished, there was an awesome silence in the room. And then slowly, one at a time, the audience began to rise and cheer loudly, for soon there was an extraordinary outburst of applause throughout the entire auditorium. From every corner of the hall, there was applause going on for Itzhak for what had unfolded. It seemed that everyone there on their feet was screaming and cheering and doing everything possible to show how much they appreciated what they had just witnessed. And in return, Itzhak looked at the crowd, wiped the sweat from his brow, raised his bow to quiet them, and then said, not boastfully, but in a quiet, pensive, yet reverent tone, "You know, sometimes it's the artist's task to find out how much music you can still make with what you have left." I'll repeat that. You know, sometimes it is the artist's task to find out how much music you can still make with what you have left. What a powerful line, right? What a powerful line, that it is our role in life to determine what we can do with what we have left in life. Now, the writer of this original article states that this line had stayed in his mind ever since he heard it. And who knows? Maybe that really is the definition of life for all of us, not just for the artist, but for all of us, to find out, if you will, how much music that we can make in life with what we have left. Now, what do I mean by what we have or what we have left? What I mean is becoming aware of who we are in this very moment and choosing to make the best of what we have as we move forward and using the principles of life that we have at our disposal. Itzhak Perlman, that I'm talking about here, is a man who had prepared all his life to make music on a violin of 4 strings, who all of a sudden, in the middle of a concert, finds himself with only 3 strings. So what does he do? He makes music, not just music, but really fantastic music out of those strings. Beautiful music, sacred music, music that was more memorable than any he had ever done before. The message that I have for you today is entitled, Embrace the Good. Embrace the good. That's what Itzhak Perlman did in that moment. He embraced the good. By example of this story, he gives us the opportunity to think in our lives, how do we have the opportunity to embrace good in our lives when what shows up for us seems to be the contrary? It's my goal today to have each of us take a look at our lives and see metaphorically, of course, where we are appearingly disabled, such as Itzhak Perlman is with his crutches, and where do we find ourselves in a situation or situations, such as he did, where that which we expected to happen or unfold in life didn't or doesn't because of a broken string, and as a result of this broken string, we may be thinking that the life that we had planned for ourselves is now impossible, and if not impossible, at least improbable. Are you with me? Yeah. Good. So, I love this slide. Don't you guys love this slide? Because it is beautiful. It was really hard to pose for it. I'll let you figure out which figure is me. I'm just kidding. The thing that I love about this slide is that it gives the opportunity for each and every one of us as we view it to wonder who or what is actually embracing there, right? But as I look at it, and it's the first time I saw it, and it's actually a sculpture that's used nightly at Burning Man. You guys familiar with Burning Man out in the desert right now? If not, Google it. It's quite an experience. Not that I've been there, but I hear about it. I look at it as an example of we as spiritual beings having the opportunity to embrace our divinity. And it's from this process of embracing our divinity that we can experience more and more and more good in our lives. So I ask you, if we all have a situation in our lives, which I'm sure we do, where a string is broken metaphorically, is there anyone here who has not had an experience such as that or has not experienced it in their life? Good, my talk's going to work. I was afraid you were all going to raise your hand. I was like, I got to rework this thing just like I've only got 3 strings. I think that so oftentimes we get stuck in life because we truly don't believe in life that all is good, right? That somewhere along the path of our lives, we don't believe that all is good. And yet, in metaphysics, all the time, what are we taught to say and taught to believe? That all is good and all is God. God is all there is. And is that true? Yeah, that's true. But I also think that so oftentimes, we don't really take the time to stop and ask ourselves, what does that statement really mean? And we use that mantra or that affirmation, if you will, looking at it only really from the relative perspective. We look at it from the perspective that, oh, all is good, all is good, all is good. And when really sometimes the physical effect of life that is unfolding sucks, right? That's really true, it does. And we as metaphysical spiritual beings choose to not look at that, thinking that in that moment that means that we would be less spiritual. But the truth is that we are as spiritual as we ever can be, innately. But for us to experience more and more and more of our innate spiritual nature, then we must choose to constantly revisit, to constantly question, to constantly contemplate in our lives, what is it that we believe that God is? We must constantly be choosing to evolve into a new paradigm, into a new model for beliefs, a new example, if you will, a new way of thinking in regards to ourselves as transformative and transcendent beings. But it's not unusual in our teaching that all that we ever really want to experience is the transcendent part. You guys get it? We want to experience that transcendent part. Groupies, you know. We oftentimes just want to experience the transcendent part without actually going through the transformative part. And the transformative part is really where the richness is. And what do I mean by the transformative part? It's about sitting in that place where we ask ourselves, what do I believe God really is? And give ourselves permission to be open to whatever the answer may be. Because sometimes the answer that comes out might really scare us. But it's in that moment of it scaring us where the richness lies, where we have the opportunity to rise up to a higher vibrational frequency and not bypass the work that is required to come to a new understanding of who we are as spiritual beings. Our nature is to evolve to a higher frequency at all times. And if we hang on to that one definition that we were given in 1982 or 1942 or 1992, we're not going to grow and evolve. I believe that one of the ways that Itzhak Perlman moved beyond where he was that day in that chair in 1995 and moved by creating something and experiencing something that had never been done before is because he was willing to take a risk and move beyond an old paradigm. He was willing to sit there in that chair and sit really in what would be the darkness, if you will, the fear of the unknown, so that greatness may be revealed through him. So why often do we all find ourselves, and I'm assuming when I say this, we all find ourselves fearful of doing that, of moving through what is required to get a higher vibrational frequency or a higher experience of life, which then means, if we choose to let it mean, that we get to experience the divine in a new way, and it's through that experience of the divine in a new way we have the opportunity to shift and create and broaden our beliefs around the divine. Well, I think it's because we really don't understand how the divine works. I think it's because we really don't understand the way the law works. I think we really don't understand what our role and responsibility is in coming to this new understanding. Now, personally, I have a mantra that I use a lot in my life. And I keep it in a little frame on one of my desks, and it's this. And I'm sure many of you have seen it. It's, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Fantastic, right? How many of you have ever heard it? How many of you have ever used it? How many of you use it frequently? How many of you ever analyze it? Let's analyze it for just a second. So it's God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. So for us to work in a way where we find a new identity, if you will, a new definition of the divine itself, we must move to a place in our lives where we understand that the God that we're talking about is an unfailing power and presence. It's also a power that isn't really granting us anything. Because if we look at it from the perspective that it can grant something to us, that means it also has the capacity to not grant. That's an old paradigm of the divine. So in metaphysics, what do we mean by I'm trying to go slow. Is it working, Barbara? No. She said, you need to go slow. I'm like, it's kind of hard for me. When we look at we wanting God to grant us serenity, what we know in metaphysics that means is that for us to get calm and call forth through us clarity of who and what we are as individuals of spirit, and for it then to bring through us that which we already have within us, which is courage. And it's that courage, which is what Itzhak Perlman had that day. And the courage is really a new perspective, a new awareness, a new vibrational field, if you will, of being willing and aware of what it is that we're willing to give in life so that we can have a different perspective on that which we're just choosing to want to have a different perspective on. And it's through that courage then we ask for the wisdom to know the difference. Well, where do we get wisdom? Well, so often we think wisdom is something that we need to go out and obtain. But that's not true. Wisdom, as far as the wisdom of the divine, exists within us already. And so what is required of us to experience more of that is to quiet ourselves and call it forth and let it rise up through us so that we can express it. And that takes place through a practice of calmness, of listening to the voice within us. And then once we know what that wisdom is that we need to know the difference of, we need to listen to it and act accordingly. But is that easy to do? No. Does it happen all the time? No. Why not? Well, that's because we get caught in our old stories in life. We get caught in the same old story over and over and over because that's what feels comfortable. This is the way Wayne Dyer addresses that. He says, with everything that's happened to you in life, you can either feel sorry for yourself or treat what has happened as a gift. He says everything in life is either an opportunity to grow or an obstacle to keep you from growing. You get to choose. Now, the key to this is that we are the ones that get to choose. We get to choose how we want our life to look. We get to choose, and we get to choose whether or not we want to create a new story. The other day, I was on the phone with someone that you guys all know very well. I'll see if you can figure out who she is. And we were having this long conversation, and we were talking about some problems that were going on in the Centers for Spiritual Living and stuff. And I asked her opinion on something. And when she went to answer it, and she stopped and said, I've made a decision in my life. I can either be part of the problem or part of the solution. And something sparked in me when she said that, because I realized choosing to be part of the solution as opposed to part of the problem gives rise to the opportunity to have a new story in life. And so if you look at this diagram, it shows us here that if we stay in problem-oriented thinking, what we get to experience is the old story again, which moves us to a place of where we can have the opportunity to continue to stay in problem-oriented thinking, and the cycle continues. Or we can go into solution-oriented thinking, thinking about what is possible in life as opposed to what is impossible or what is repetition in our lives. But what is possible in our life, and it's from there we get to experience a new story. Which do you prefer? Which do you prefer? And I'm not asking you which do you prefer from the perspective of what do you wish to have in life. I'm asking you from the perspective what shows up in your life more often, and be willing to let the truth come up and not judge yourself for that. And I think on some degree we all get stuck in the old ideology of hanging on to the problem, as you were talking about a little bit a moment ago. Hanging on to the problem, and then the old story comes up in our life and manifests itself, because that's the way the spiritual laws of the universe work. And then we have it show up and we say to ourselves, how the hell did this get here? Without really stopping and realizing that we play a vital role in our life, in the life that we experience. If you and I want to live a life where we're choosing to embrace the good in life more and more and more, we must choose to create a new story. Well, a new story around what? A new story around the divine itself. A new story around how the spiritual laws of the universe work. A new story about the omnipresence of the power that we each individualize and its transformative and transcendent nature. We really need to take time on a daily basis and ask ourselves, what do I believe the power of God is? And ask ourselves, do I believe it has the capacity to fail? For you and I to experience more and more of the good that exists in our universe, we must get to a place where we know inherently within our being that the power of the divine is an unfailing presence. This is what Ernest Holmes writes about this concept. He says, for you and I, he says, we must seek to realize the spiritual universe that which we are one with, regardless of any condition that appears, if we would embody the greatest good. He goes on to write, the truth is indivisible and whole. God, in and of itself, is complete and whole. Disregarding all evidence to the contrary, the student of truth will maintain that he lives in a perfect universe and among potentially perfect people. He or she will regulate this thinking to meet this necessity and will refuse to believe in its opposite. At first, though, he may be influenced by conditions, and he may appear to be weak. But as time goes on, he will prove to himself that his position is a correct one. For that which appears imperfect will begin to slip from his experience. What he's telling us there is that our responsibility, if we want to evolve into a greater understanding and a practice of who we are as spiritual beings, is to engage a practice of doing that. Knowing at a very deep level that God is all there is and all there is God is the practice that we must engage in. But we also must give ourselves permission to live life. And when we're out there living life and stuff shows up that doesn't feel so godly or doesn't look so godly, homeless people might be one of those, as you were talking about a while ago, is to give ourselves permission to feel what really comes up for us. And in that feeling, still know the truth. And if there's contradiction that's unfolding, stay in that contradiction until resolution rises up. Because it's out of that resolution then that we move to a greater understanding of who we are as spiritual beings and the wholeness and the allness of the divine itself. Once again, the title of my talk today is Embrace the Good. So what are the definitions for embrace? Because personally, I think it's important for us to really understand all of this in an intellectual way, to embody it oftentimes in an intellectual way. But as Barbara said, I work with teenagers a lot. I think it's important to kind of get out there and get gritty and dirty with our spiritual practice of the divine. So the definitions for embrace, which is going to give us permission to do that, is one, hug somebody. The man back here wanted to do high fives and hugs at the beginning. He was ready to get his God on, right? That's fantastic, and he was shut down. Did you notice that? But with that said, what I'm gathering on that is that he understands that it's through that hugging process that we have the opportunity to embrace more of that which we are. So we have the opportunity to know that today is the day, in this very moment, to choose anew and to embrace our good. And I'm going to remind you that as you move forward today, to ask yourself when you embrace during your hugs and high fives downstairs, to ask yourself, when I embrace today, what am I embracing? Am I embracing a loved one? Am I embracing a friend? Am I embracing someone I haven't seen in years? Am I embracing a fellow minister? Or am I embracing my divinity that shows up as these individuals? Ask yourself that. The continued definition is to make use of something or adopt something. Now, I don't know about you guys, but one of the ways on a daily basis that I really get to see God in my life is through my dog, Miss Sadie. Miss Sadie reminds me every time that she meets me at the door, ready to lick, to love, and that wiggling little butt is that good exists. And what I love about Sadie is that she doesn't hold grudges. She doesn't look at me and say, where were you and what were you doing earlier today, right? There's no judgment there. She shows up really willing to embrace the good. Now, of course, I return that embrace by giving her treats. But it is a spiritual practice for me of knowing who God is by looking at my animal. And so the reason I share this with you today is, besides being a proud papa of my four-legged spiritual offspring, is to remind you to find something in your life today, to start as a spiritual practice to experience more and more and more of your good. Ralph Waldo Emerson tells us that what you are in life comes to you. Well, why is that the case? That's because we live in a universe that's governed by spiritual law, and that which we are and that which we choose to be comes to us. So if you don't like what's coming to you in your life, become something else. With me? So let today be the day that you choose to draw into your life more and more and more good. In so doing, you'll get to experience more and more and more of that which we call God, but you get to define what that God is. Hope you have a great Sunday. It was fun to play with you some today. Happy Labor Day weekend. Namaste. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. That was quite inspiring. We have more good to embrace right now. Celebrating spirit musically once again, please welcome Raspin and Chris.
Back again. It takes me a minute. What did she say about it? Is this group a little older than teenagers? I am. A little older. Just a little. 39. Plus. What? I was looking at your shoes too. Those are small. We're plugging in. So my favorite meditational flute player, she plays a Native American flute, is in the audience. I hope, did you come see me? Oh, Deborah Delahunty. If you haven't heard her CD, it's awesome. It's a great CD. Moving more. Okay, so do you think it's good to be safe? So is this like a group that, are we ready? I mean, I'm known as a blues singer. Kind of, not really. Do you want something nice and spiritual? Or do you want something a little nasty, down and dirty that you can sing along with? Which would you prefer? Come on, sister. What is it? You get to pick. Down and dirty. I know. Will you sing along since my background singers aren't here today? It's real easy. And there's a comedian, Beth Lapidus. If you've never seen her show, she's awesome too. This room is full of talent, talent, talent. And then there's you. Well, catfish are jumping. Whew. It's an impossibility. Somebody's been rumbling and tumbling in my backseat. You tell me lies. Come on, Grandpa, and hold me tight. We go rumbling, tumbling, rumbling, tumbling. That's it. Rumbling, tumbling, rumbling, tumbling. Rumbling, tumbling, rumbling, tumbling. Why? Get you through the night. Whatever, get you through the night. Bookers at the taxman. What do I do? I sold my new car, still got no revenue. Somebody loves you, but oh no, oh, here you go. Rumbling, tumbling, rumbling, tumbling. Why? Get you through the night. Get you through the night. Skid her up, Rio. Do it, do it, do it, do it. Skid it to Bobby. Skid it to Bobo. Skid it to Boda, to Boda, to Boda. You counting on me through the night. What's your name, sister, with the white hairdo, poof on funk with a white shirt on? Come on. Oh, Anita, don't you like it? What gets you through the night, Anita? Uh-oh, Keith. Who plucks your strings? Rumbling. Who Sadie? This song is awfully so low this morning for a Sunday morning service, but I don't know if it's apropos. Rumbling, tumbling, rumbling, tumbling. Rumbling, tumbling, rumbling, tumbling. Rumbling, tumbling, rumbling, tumbling. Wow, what sends you? What gets you through the night? Whatever gets you through the night. From neo-classic to the Berlin Wall, where cities will crumble, I tell you, their Jews they will fall. And lost and lonely without a trace. Rumbling, tumbling, rumbling, tumbling, all the way down. Rumbling, tumbling, rumbling, tumbling. So, rumbling, tumbling, rumbling, tumbling. Rumbling, tumbling, Mitch. What tickles your eyes? So, give it to us, baby. Give us a little bit. Give it to us. Oh, yes. Woo! Through the night that gets me through the night. Rumbling, tumbling, rumbling. Whatever gets you, and I mean anything that makes you happy. Bring me on home. Rumbling, give me a little rock. Rumbling, tumbling, rumbling, tumbling. What? Get you through the night. Rumbling, tumbling, rumbling, tumbling, rumbling, tumbling, rumbling through the night. Bookers at the taxman. Rumbling, tumbling, rumbling through the night. Give it up for Westlake. Give it up for yourselves. Woo! Doggies! Woo! Be kind to one another. Thank you so much. You are welcome. Give it up for Chris Bolek. Give it up for Mitch Kaplan. And thank you, Sandra, for all your blessings and bringing me to Westlake. You're the best.
Woo! Rumbling, tumbling. Thank you, Raspin and Chris and Mitch.
Thank you.
You can visit Raspin downstairs during hugs, handshakes, snuggles, and more at Fellowship to talk about his music and treat yourself to one of his CDs. You are worth it to get it through the night. And now, time for our offertory. Speaking of worth it, will the ushers please come forward? This is our time to be in gratitude and appreciation for this awesome Sunday morning. Thank you all who are in service this morning. You are, each and every one of you, a beautiful expression of spirit. And we all appreciate you.